Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope all of you, along with your loved ones, would be doing fine and having great time with your families. So we will continue with the next part of our last lecture discussion, and we will try to conclude this topic today. In the first lecture of this week, we were talking about the basic concepts of IR, and we tried to have an overview about the both the state and non-state actors which operate in the international system. So today we would continue with that, and we would try to proceed with some of the other concepts which are very much significant in the study of intelligence. So the first thing which we would try to elaborate today is the concept of state and sovereignty. In our previous lecture, we had talked too much about state, and today we will talk about another significant concept which is very important in international relation studies, and that is the sovereignty, and it is very much related to the concept of state as well. So first of all, we will try to define this very concept of sovereignty. Sovereignty, it is known as, it is termed as the capability of the state to control and determine events within its own territory. So in simple words, we can say that it is a sort of authority which state, and it in after the Westphalian Treaty, it has been relegated to the state, and state in a way is authorized to establish its control and decide the events and matters in a specific territory under its jurisdiction. So state is the ultimate authority which cannot be challenged from inside and outside. That is the crux of sovereignty, the concept of sovereignty. So now we will talk about various types of states and the concept of sovereignty which is associated with those type of states. When we talk about the Islamic state, in Islamic state, Almighty Allah is considered as the sovereign. He is considered as the ultimate authority, and this authority, this ultimate authority, has been is usually relegated, is usually transferred to the supreme leadership of the country, who is supposed to govern the affairs of the states according to the laws of the rules and laws set by that particular country. They can be typically in the form of laws of Sharia, and there can be some man-made laws included in that list which set by that particular state. So in modern days democracies, the state is considered as the ultimate sovereign authority, and he enjoys the sort of absolute power both from within and outside the country. So we can simply say that this is the kind of authority which cannot be challenged by any other authority. So moving forward, sovereignty is a legal concept, and there are various scenarios when we talk about the legality of sovereignty. A state can enjoy a legal authority even if it cannot exercise actual authority. So we would take the examples of few countries where we can see the demonstration of sovereignty both in the context of legality and actuality. So if we try to take the example of Pakistan, we would come to know, if we closely observe the situation in Pakistan, that there are some areas in Pakistan where the governments have not been able to establish the writ of the state, and the state was not actually enjoying, the state was not actually exercising its authority in those areas, because though still it has a legal sovereignty, and it always had that legal sovereignty with itself. So even though state cannot implement its authority in actual terms within a specific territory, within the territory under its jurisdiction, still it can enjoy a legal power, still it holds the legal power within that system. Okay, now we will talk about the Westphalian sovereignty. You might have, being a student of politics, you are supposed to be familiar with the concept, the Treaty of Westphalia, which happened in 1648. So the concept of modern nation state can be traced back to the Westphalian Treaty, and this very concept of sovereignty got emerged from there too. So when we talk about the sovereignty in terms of like as a modern concept, it means that states that operate in the like system of international world, in the system of global world, one state does not have any right to interfere in the internal affairs of the other state. So that is also related to the various dimensions of sovereignty which we were discussing few minutes before, that the sovereignty is something which cannot be challenged from inside and from outside the state. So when one state tries to interfere in the affairs of the other state, that means the sovereignty of one state is being challenged by the another. So this Westphalian concept of sovereignty confirms that no state according to law is authorized to intervene or interfere in the internal affairs of the other states. So all the states around the world, they are supposed to follow this rule established by the international system through the United Nations. Okay, now we will talk about the concept of sovereignty in the study, in the discipline of international relations. When we try to focus on the debates which are there in the study of international relations, Westphalian sovereignty is considered as the very basis of the international system of states. Like, the international system of states is basically built on the concept of Westphalian sovereignty, that all states, whether big or small, powerful or weak, they are equal in the eyes of law, and each and every state in the international system is supposed to respect the sovereignty and independence of the other states in the world. So this is the very basis on which this provides the very foundation of the international system in which around 200 states of the world are operating nowadays. The principle of sovereignty is still in practice. It has not been eroded with the passage of time. Rather, with the passage of time, it has been gaining more and more significance because of the erosion of sovereignty in various ways in the modern era. And it has been mentioned in the Article 2 of the United Nations Charter that states that recognizes the sovereign equality of all member states, that all the states are equal in the eyes of law. But even like when we talk about the concept of sovereignty in practice, like in theory, it has been mentioned that all the states are equal, all the states are sovereign, and they enjoy equal sovereignty. But the United Nations Security Council's veto member states, it is a sort of negation of this very concept of legal sovereignty of or equal sovereignty of the states. And this very article makes it illegal for a state to intervene in the matters of the other state. So if this very basis of the international system is going to be challenged and is going to be eroded, so we can anticipate that there can be a chaos in the world, and which might trigger the world to annihilation. So this concept of sovereignty, which provides the very basis of the international system of states, it should be upheld and it should be in practice for the proper regulation of the international affairs. Okay, now we will talk about the limits to sovereignty, that how and in how many ways that a sovereignty of state can be limited, can be made limited, or how it can be reduced. So there are different ways, like through which the sovereignty of state can be put under certain restrictions. So despite the ongoing emphasis on sovereignty, there are various factors that limits a state's sovereignty. So this these limits of sovereignty can be voluntary and non-voluntary as well. So, when we talk about the various debates which are there in the study of international relations, there are claims that globalization is one of the factors that is restricting the state sovereignty, or that is putting some limitation on the state's sovereignty. So, if we look at the concept of globalization closely, we come to know that in this globalized world and so many trade agreements have been signed between and among the governments of the world, in which, like let's say, the free trade agreement, where states cannot, states who are involved in those agreements, they cannot actually challenge those terms of trade. So globalization is a sort of phenomenon. This is one of the examples which can take to describe the role of globalization over the erosion of the state sovereignty. And in the later discussion, we would also try to come up with some more examples to check with limits to sovereignty. So, first we will talk about the limits to sovereignty from above. Like when a state gets into or gets the membership of some of the international organizations, like the intergovernmental organizations such as the United Nations, European Union, or NATO, and there are so many other such intergovernmental organizations. When a state gets a membership of such organizations, it has to limit some of its sovereignty to that organization, to that body. Like, let's take the example of NATO. So, all the and this issue, has been recently highlighted a lot by the Trump administration, that the most of the members of the NATO alliance, they are not fulfilling their obligations in terms of providing financial resources to that bloc, to that organizations. Like most of the countries committed to render 2% of their GDP growth for that alliance, but most of the countries are not following or not uh, doing that. So Trump administration has been criticizing, and the most of the other major members of this alliance. And when organization reaches a certain decision unanimously, all the states of that organization are mandatory to follow those rules, those agreements. So that is one of the ways that the sovereignty of a state is eroded to some extent, or some limits can be put on the sovereignty of the state. Another example is like, when a particular state get into signs a contract or agreement or pact with other countries in the world, they have to surrender some of those states have to surrender some of the states sovereignty to that pact, that agreement. Such as, when some states commits to nuclear weapons, or NPT, human rights and trade, etc. Some states around the world which have nuclear weapons, they have committed to nuclear test ban treaty, but most of the states they do not want to get into that agreement because they consider that might put some checks on the limitations of their state sovereignty. So this is another example through which uh, the sovereignty of a state can be made limited, or certain checks can be put on the sovereignty of states. Now we will talk about the limits from below, that how the sovereignty of a state can be um, reduced from inside the country. In many countries around the world, some regions enjoy a large measure of autonomy, with many decisions made at the local rather than national level. So, when we look at the system of most of the states around the world, we came to know that they have the federal system in place. Like they would have two sorts of governments: the national governments and the provincial governments, or the federal governments and the state governments, such as the case with the United States of America. So the provincial legislatures, the provincial assemblies will have a certain autonomy from the national government or from the federal government. Take the example of Pakistan. That in Pakistan there is a federal system in place, and the federal government, which is known as the national government, it has a limited jurisdiction, or it cannot fully interfere in the provincial assembly's affairs. Let's take the example of the 18th Amendment. Most of the areas, such as education and other areas, they are under the autonomy of the provincial assemblies. Like, provincial assemblies are authorized to manage all those policies about education and some other fields. So the federal government or the national government is restricted to interfere thoroughly in the affairs of the provincial assemblies. So most of the decisions are made by the autonomous regions in operating in that bigger network of state. So this is one of another way, like when we talk about the limits from below, the sovereignty of a state can also be made limited from inside the country. Now we will take the example of the United Kingdom. Many decisions are made by regional assemblies in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales rather than the government in London. So this is another example. If you look at the map of the uh, United Kingdom, we can see that there are certain autonomous units which are a part of the United Kingdom, and they do enjoy a certain level of autonomy, and they make their decisions by themselves regarding different fields, regarding different aspects. So the government which is stationed in England, it cannot it cannot intervene in the matters of the autonomous. Okay, now we will talk about another concept which is related to state, like the concept of state, that is known as the failed state, or we always we frequently listen about this terminology, that some of the states around the globe are taken as or considered as failed states, and this charge has been put against Pakistan as well repeatedly by most of the countries in the West. They consider Pakistan a failed state on different fronts. So we will check with that how, like, what are the characteristics that determine the status of a state as a failed state or successful state, and then we would explain this with some sort of examples as well. So first of all, there is no consensus on the very definition of a failed state, but a failed state will show at least some of the following characteristics. For instance, a loss of control of its territory, like, or of the monopoly on the legitimate use of physical force therein. So when we term some state as an example of failed state, we can say that some parts of the territory of a state is not under the jurisdiction, or the state has lost its monopoly of legitimate use of force on that part of the territory. And Pakistan examples can be quoted in this very regard, like the federal areas, like the FATA areas used to be out of the, like, legitimate use of force of the, like, the state never, like, succeed fully to establish its writ in those areas. So that's one of the reasons that Pakistan can be termed in the category of failed states. The another characteristic of a failed state is the erosion of legitimate authority to make collective decisions. When a state loses its legal authority, we already discussed about the legal authority and actual authority. So when a state loses, or the authority of a state, or the state does not enjoy that legal authority to make collective decisions, that can highlight the elements of a failed state prevailing in that country. So another factor is the inability to provide public services, and this is somewhat related to the welfare concept of state. Every state is supposed to, every state is like brought into existence just to provide the basic services to its citizens, whether education, medical, security. These are the different areas where states around the world are supposed to provide the basic facilities to its citizens. So when a state fails to provide the basic services to its citizens, that can demonstrate that a state is moving towards the status of a failed state. And last one is the inability to interact with other states as a full member of the international community. In the previous lecture, we talked about the element of recognition, and for states, in order to operate properly in the international community, they are supposed to get recognition from the maximum number of states around the world. And when state receives recognition from most of the countries around the world, that can establish its status as a successful state. And if a state won't be able to get recognized from most of the countries around the world, it won't be considered as a successful state or a fully sovereign state. We can take the example of Taiwan. Taiwan enjoys the recognition from very few countries around the world, and this can be categorized in the category of failed state because of this very factor. So if we see all these factors prevailing in one country, that country can be considered as moving towards losing its state sovereignty or moving towards the failed state. So different states around the world can be analyzed by keeping these factors in mind to determine whether states are successful or failed. So when we talk about the failed states and the relationship with sovereignty, we come to know that the failed states might have lost actual capability to exercise its authority, but they still enjoy the legal authority. And we can take the example of Somalia in this very context. Somalia is a country which has been fragmented among different factions. So this can be still like it enjoys a legal authority, but it does not enjoy actual ability to exercise its monopoly of power on the fragmented sections in Somalia. So another example can be taken as like we can talk about the Libya as well. Like Assad's regime has a control or has the actual authority. He exercises actual authority over certain parts of the territory, but certain areas are under the control of the rebels and Houthi rebels, and they are claiming their rule or their actual sovereignty in those areas. So we can see that the elected government or the implanted government, like the official government which is there in Libya, led by the Mr. Assad, that that is still enjoying the legal sovereignty, though its actual sovereignty is not fully implemented throughout the territory of Libya. So there are many other states that exert limited actual authority over parts of their territory. So you can find some of such examples, and you can look for all these elements which can determine whether some states have actual authority, whether those states enjoy the actual authority or they just enjoy the legal authority over the territory under the jurisdiction of that state. So that is all for today's lecture, and if you have any queries, you can raise your question in the WhatsApp group, and I would be quite happy to address your queries. So wish you all the best, and see you next week for the upcoming lectures. Until then, stay safe and healthy. Allah Hafiz.